Greetings, Sentinels fans. Look what I got. Check it out. This is going to be exciting. So, I think it's time for another evolution video. Let's talk about La Capitan. A quick disclaimer. This character is 1, a woman, 2, Spanish, and 3, shown in very different eras of her life, all of which will make her very difficult to voice act. So, bear with me. Buenos dias, amigos. I am La Capitan of La Paradoja Magnifica, jewel of the time stream. When I stowed away on this ship, I never imagined I would be her captain, let alone travel from universe to universe and timeline to timeline. Oh, I bet if mi familia could see me now, they would be horrified. When that ship sailed through that rift in time, when I felt my form charge up with chronal energy, I knew my life had changed. I am now bound to the time stream and the ship. The ship's life is my life, almost literally. I could see the multiverse. I could look upon the time stream and witness the vast infinity. I could reach out and touch universes both similar and immensely different from my own. I could see the numerous beauties and horrors of existence and experience whatever I want. I can even affect whatever I want. Nothing is beyond my grasp. I can meet whoever I want, take whatever I want, and kill anyone I please. Time is my ocean, and time is my weapon. If someone opposes me, it doesn't take much to neutralize them. And if they have something interesting, then me or my little buddy, Chiquito, will just take it. Finders keepers. If more La Paradojas Magnificas sail the seas, that isn't my problem. If people get hurt, then they should have stayed out of my way. I will get what I want, and nobody else in this universe or any other can stop me. Basta! Who's there? It is time to teach you a lesson. Buenas tardes. It's been a while, or has it only been a few seconds? That's the frustrating thing about time travel. It's hard to keep track. After a good long talk with myself, I learned that my actions were incredibly damaging to the time stream. Alternate forms, shifting timelines, and paradoxes spread around my younger self like a disease. My very existence was becoming a poison, and my eldest self made it clear that if I didn't stop harming the timelines, I would be eliminated. I still want the things I want, though. But perhaps I could alter my methods. If I were to gather a crew and minimize the use of time powers, I may still gather what I desire, without incurring the wrath of my eldest self. So it is settled. I will gather the greatest pirate crew of all time. Any outcast and ruffian who wishes to board my ship and hoist the Jolly Roger shall find adventures and riches beyond their wildest imagining. I am Maria Elena Teresa Fafila Servanda Jimena Merzuela Paterna Dominga Galvila Placia Sandina Belita Eufemia Colomba Contana Aldonza Mafalda Cristina Tegrida de Falcon, Scourge of the Multiverse, and La Reina del Tiempo. And I was, for a time. Me and my crew scoured the timelines, taking what we pleased and fighting any battles we chose. It was glorious, but eventually those adventures and riches started to feel hollow. It didn't feel right anymore. I had collected treasure from 1,000 time periods and 1,000 universes, making dear friends and enemies along the way. But it is all pointless. Eventually, I stopped collecting crew. I found homes for all of them, and we went our separate ways. What was there to do now? In one last bid for adventure, I decided I would seek the end. I took the wheel of La Paradoja Magnifica and sailed as far forward as I could. I would see the point where infinity ends. It was shockingly soon. I saw it up ahead, a big black void where all universes terminated. It was bizarre. Everything I knew about the multiverse made me believe this wasn't how it should end, all at once in complete blackness. I looked around for anything I could find about it, and what I found led me to Oblivion, a singular entity, unaffected by the rules of the multiverse. Unlike me or any of my friends or enemies, there was only one Oblivion, and he has the kind of power to end all things. It was then that I found purpose again. I would prevent the end of time. Oblivion will be my final enemy. So back into the time stream I went. I identified the final battleground Oblivion will face. My own world at the beginning of the 21st century, facing down the same superpowered people that I fought time and again. That's kinda comforting, actually. If anyone could do the impossible, it would be them. I sped around the timeline and neighboring ones, fixing any problems that could harm the heroes of that time. I created, I altered, and I destroyed, all calculated to make the greatest impact I can against the singular entity. It took a long time, but thankfully, I have all the time in the world. And now, I make my final move. The rest is up to them. The heroes will have to pick up my mission. It is time for one final ride. Ready the battering ram. Set sails to full. Buen viaje, Oblivion. You and I will be gone from this time. Onward to glory! There. Now that I no longer have to do the accent, let's look at the deck comparisons. Just like with Baron Blade, we have another case of a character with 3 decks. A villain, team villain, and a hero. Also like Baron Blade, the promo variant for La Commodora is also not the same person as the base variant, so she's off the table for comparisons. One thing I love about La Capitan is that she's a time traveler who has been a time traveler for essentially her whole life, but she's also a side character. This means that any version of her can show up at any time. You can have regular adult Capitan show up one day, but young Capitan might show up the next day. Indeed, in the lore of the game, her first appearance fighting the Southwest Sentinels was actually something like the 3rd or 6th time she has fought the heroes, but the first time the heroes fought her. What's more, she introduces herself as La Capitan in that instance, and then later, chronologically, when we get to her first fight against the heroes run into her and identify her as La Capitan, and she says, "Oh, I like that, I'm taking that name." And then later, when she shows up to the heroes for the first time, she identifies herself as La Capitan, thus introducing herself to the heroes. So the heroes gave her the name, but she also introduced herself as that name to the heroes, so that's how the heroes know her, so the heroes gave her the name, and if you're trying to wrap your mind around that paradox, for your own sanity, let me do you a favor. Don't. And the simple progression of the character tells a story by itself. When she is young, she is very willing to use her time powers, but not very considerate of the consequences. Frequently, the time shenanigans she causes by accident is more dangerous than anything malicious she does. And even though she's a team villain, she still seems to be very much a lone wolf. Fast forward to her adult life, and you see her with a whole crew, but also not using her time powers all that much anymore, relying on things she learned about time travel, but not using the more dangerous aspects of it. She is still being villainous, but she is taking some responsibility for her actions. Fast forward again to La Commodora, and you see her alone once again, though occasionally working with Chrono Ranger. But she is using the full range of her powers, but in a very precise manner. She is very careful about what she is doing, and she's also brutally efficient, even going so far as to destroy an entire universe that posed a danger to the main timeline. Instead of just wanting to do whatever, she now has a very specific goal, so she is working in a way to accomplish it, without disrupting things too much, as time shenanigans are wont to do. But let's look at the decks. One feature of La Capitan's 2 villain decks is an ability to ignore some attacks by stealing hero cards and using them as shields. Young Capitan accomplishes this through her pet space monkey, Chiquito. However, adult Capitan has learned to accomplish this without relying on her monkey. Essentially how this works in the lore is that she steals things from people, and when she has them and they connect to the time ship, then she has both an anchor to that point in space-time and also a little bit of power over the object, allowing her some resistance. You will also note that she stops being a thief by the time she becomes La Commodora. So the hero version of her does not replicate this ability, opting instead to use her resources to assist her allies. That might be the thematic purpose behind the equipment requiring a card discard in order to stick around. Now her crew is something unique to adult Capitan, so Commodora and young Capitan don't have the equivalents. Indeed, adult Capitan is very much the odd one out when it comes to deck comparisons. Almost her whole deck is about her crew and her interactions with them, with the exception of a few cards. However, she's a solo act when she is old and young. Consequently, you see a lot more comparisons between young Capitan and Commodora. One big thing to note, you don't actually see either of them doing direct fighting all that much. Yeah, young Capitan can do an attack each turn from her character card, but you will also note that if Chiquito isn't there, she will forego an attack in favor of finding the monkey and protecting herself. Most of the deadly stuff that either of these characters are doing are byproducts of their time powers. That doesn't mean they don't fight though. La Capitan's Donde Aquí is not a perfect match, but a close approximation to Commodora's Flintlock and Cutlass. They also can use their time powers in combination with their combat abilities to make themselves hard to hit, like with a good time span and combat timing. And both of them are perfectly fine with using La Paradoja Magnifica herself as a weapon. like with temporal keelhaul and run aground. But let's look at the time powers. Now I may be stretching here, but I think Take Time has some connection with Cuando Ahora. I say this because Take Time feels like a more controlled version of Cuando Ahora, allowing you more precise control over the destruction and the benefits you can reap from it. Also, Take Time's name feels like a contrast to Cuando Ahora, which in Spanish means when? Now. Also, if you're curious, Donde aquí means where? Here. So if you wanted to use both these cards, you could say Donde y cuando? Aquí y ahora. Where and when? Here and now. Moving on, Harness Anomaly is a reference to Anomalous Shift, as both involve shuffling decks and either playing the top card or discarding it. Next, Chronological Sweet Spot is referencing Chronological Hotspot, though interestingly, the cards they affect are different. Hotspot puts ongoing equipment or miscellaneous cards into play, while Sweet Spot puts one-shots into play. Maybe you should learn that one-shots don't hurt. And finally, we have La Paradoja Magnifica, which behaves differently in each version. Young Capitan hardly ever uses the time ship, leading me to believe that she primarily uses it for transport. Adult Capitan has La Paradoja Magnifica as a target, but I think that version is also essentially using it as transport, which means either she is doing more stuff, or more crew is showing up. It does also have the effect of shuffling the villain's trash into the deck. You know, screwing with the deck seems to be a very common thing with time travelers in this game, which serves to keep Capitan at full capacity and refreshes her. The other times where La Paradoja is being utilized is Walk the Plank, which seems so terribly mundane, and possibly Maria Elena's Revenge, where, while it activates with any of La Capitan's cards, the art and flavor text seem to imply that it's a reaction to damaging the ship. But La Commodora? La Commodora's philosophy is waste not, want not. She doesn't keep the full ship around. That's dangerous, as destroying it can result in her being stranded, or worse. Instead, she uses her time powers to portal in bits and pieces of the ship, allowing her to utilize all the various accoutrements, from jail cells to fancy guns to her hoard of treasure. When playing La Commodora, you are also playing La Paradoja Magnifica. You are using the ship to its fullest capacity. I will say, I am a bit sad that she is no longer around for the RPG timeline. Maria Elena started as a goofy, fun Silver Age villain that turned into a simple but very interesting character. Part of that is simply because we see her in the full scope of her life, starting as a very selfish brat of a person who, over time, starts taking more responsibility for her actions, and gets significantly more proficient at her abilities as she goes, until she finally sacrifices herself for the good of the multiverse. I salute you, La Capitan. And that's another one. I hope you've enjoyed it. Safe travels and use your time wisely. Take care, friends. And thus begins the era of the green screen. Let's see how this works. A quick disclaimer. This character is 1, a woman, B, after I had a good long talk with myself. Come in.
Rose wants to check out the green screen.
I am Maria Elena Teresa Fafila Servanda Jimena Mersuela Paterna Dominga Galvila Placia Sandina Belita Eufemia Colomba Contana Aldonza Mafalda Cristina Tegrida de Falcon, Scourge of the Multiverse, and la Reina del Tiempo. Arg.